Today, big tech censorship and free speech has been the #1 topic on Capitol Hill. Earlier, I spoke to 2024 presidential candidate and former Vice President Mike Pence. Mr. Vice President, nice to speak to you again, sir.
Thank you, Greta. Thanks for having me on. Hello from New Hampshire.
I know. You're very busy up there. All right. One of the big issues in Washington today is to what extent the United States government should be meeting with big tech to talk about things like what's put on the platform, whether it's misinformation or whatever reason. Should big tech be talking to the federal government as much as it at least seemingly has been?
Well, I couldn't be more grateful for the decision by that Texas judge recently that literally called out the Biden administration and said no more contact between the administration and these major social media platforms. Look, one of the real disgraces of the 2020 election was the fact that Hunter Biden laptop story broke in the New York Post, and then literally every major artery of the media, not Newsmax, but virtually every other artery of the media and social media suppressed that story, kept it away from the American people, and we just can't have that. And I welcome the fact that this lawsuit's moving forward. We've got to have a freedom of the press. We've got to reject censorship in this country. And if I'm elected president of the United States, we're going to make sure and defend the free flow of information for all the American people.
All right. Well, you mentioned the Hunter Biden laptop, which brings me back to a topic I've discussed many times here. The 51 who signed that letter right before the election still have security clearances, as much as I know, and they were dead wrong. And they provided it first to the Biden campaign right before the debate, and then, of course, it was picked up and was broadcast all over the media. Would you strip those 51, or would you change the rules? Who gets to maintain security clearances after leaving official jobs?
I think it's a really good question, Greta. I really do. I just think the fact that we now know the Biden campaign was actually colluding with those former intelligence officials to encourage the creation of a document that, frankly, the Biden family had to know was false. I mean, the idea that President Joe Biden in that presidential debate stood up and said 51 people have said this is Russian disinformation when, look, the FBI had the laptop. And how hard would it have been for him to say to Hunter, did you turn your laptop in at a pawn shop? And, the fact that information was denied to the American people, and these people that continue to have security clearances in this country were a part of that, I think needs to be held to account.
All right, the whistleblower hearing yesterday on Capitol Hill, and there have been some talk about whether there should be a special counsel, obviously called for by the Republicans, to investigate how that's been handled. Two IRS investigators say that, in essence, that their investigation was stymied in part. What would you do? Is a special counsel warranted? Because a lot of times we have these special counsels, and we go down incredible rabbit holes, and it becomes, we go way off afar, and sometimes I'm not so sure how good they are for us.
Well, it's the reason we got rid of the independent counsel statute, isn't it? Because these special counsels, end up, going on all kinds of adventures. We lived through 2.5 years of the Russia hoax, and now we know from the Durham report that investigation by the FBI should never even have begun, Greta. It was a real scandal. I got to tell you, as Karen and I travel around New Hampshire, it's that I started this morning with a group of pastors from leading Bible churches and evangelical churches across the state, and I heard how troubled people are about a perception of the unequal treatment under the law, and to see the way not only my former running mate but other Republicans, pro-lifers are treated, and then to hear the testimony we've heard yesterday of FBI officials who identify themselves as Democrats, nevertheless being told you cannot ask questions because it's the president's family, is a real scandal. I think it's one of the reasons so many people are being drawn to our campaign, because I'm committed to clean house, not just a new attorney general, but I'm going to clean house of all the senior leadership of the Justice Department on day one, a new FBI director, but new deputy directors. We have got to restore confidence in our equal treatment under the law, and people that want to rally behind our efforts can go to MikePence2024.com, be a part of our team, donate $1 to support this campaign. And I promise you, from my years on the Judiciary Committee, my years as Vice President, I will know how to make appointments to the Justice Department that'll have the confidence of every American.
But what do we do right now? Because we have a Republican House investigating this. And look, if you're a Republican, you're cheering it on. If you're a Democrat, you think that this is silly. We've got a Democratic Attorney General appointment because we have a Democratic president in the White House. So how do we sort ourselves out of this mess and get to the facts to find out whether or not there was corruption? If there was corruption, that's very serious. On the other hand, if it's a false allegation, that's equally as serious. It would be, it's a terrible thing to be falsely accused.
Well, look, there's a reason why the Congress has subpoena power. They have the authority to call people before the Congress and create the checks and balances that the founders of our country contemplated when they fashioned the Constitution of the United States. But, the ultimate antidote here is new leadership. And it's one of the reasons why my wife and I, after a lot of prayerful deliberation, made the decision to run for president, because I think the Republican Party needs new leadership that can then send our country back in the direction of strong borders, a strong defense, of free market economics, pro-growth, fiscal responsibility, the right to life. But also it's about knowing from my 20 years of experience that the day I walk into that Oval Office, if I'm given that privilege, I will know the caliber of men and women that will be required in every level of the executive branch to restore the confidence of the American people and put America back on the right track.
All right, you mentioned the border, and my colleague Jason Jones was here yesterday. He brought me these bracelets that the cartels put on the wrists of these people. It's basically human trafficking and slavery that they put on the wrists of people across the border so they can collect money from them and terrorize them. Would you classify the cartel as terrorists, and would that make any difference? Or would there be any different policy from I know that you have a different policy in President Biden. There are different parties, but even different policies than your predecessor, Republican presidents. Look,
we reduced illegal immigration and asylum abuse by 90% under the Trump-Pence administration. And I have the privilege of being president of the United States. We will put those policies back into effect. We'll finish the wall. We'll restore Remain in Mexico. We'll put Title 42 back into effect. What you're seeing, what those bracelets also attest to, what the Sound of Freedom movie that's touching hearts all over this country is showing to the American people is we have a massive, not just wave of illegal immigration, but the cartels are engaged in the largest human trafficking enterprise in the history of this country. And it begins by securing our border, upholding the rule of law. But Joe Biden and the Democrats are committed to open border policies that have created the worst crisis at our border in American history. We've got states around the country that are helping down in Texas. I spoke today on the phone with Governor Chris Sununu from here in New Hampshire. He's actually down on the border because New Hampshire sent 175 National Guard just to help secure the Rio Grande and to try and stop that flow. But ultimately, it's going to take new leadership. We've got to tell the American people there are people suffering on both sides of the border. But a nation without borders is not a nation. We prove you can secure it. And for the sake of ending this human trafficking, 5 million in the last 2 years, for the sake of ending the flow of fentanyl, for the sake of ending dangerous people that are coming into this country with nefarious effect in the midst of that throng of humanity, we've got to secure our border. And as president, I will.
Mr. Vice President, nice to talk to you, sir. Hope you come back.
Greta, thank you. And anybody that'd like to be a part of what we're doing, go to MikePence2024.com. Donate even $1. You'll help us get on that debate stage in a month.